Good afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, June 20th, 2023, and the time is 3:33 p.m. This is a meeting of the Gloucester School Committee's Building and Finance Subcommittee. As the recent amendments to the open meeting law allows, the school committee will continue to hold meetings remotely. Adequate alternative access to meetings is provided through the Zoom link listed on the agenda. Additionally, all votes taken by the Gloucester School Committee's Building and Finance Subcommittee during this and future meetings will be by roll call vote. At this meeting, there is no public comment, therefore instructions on how to speak to the subcommittee virtually are not issued. If you'd like to address the Gloucester School Committee, please comment at our regularly scheduled full school committee meeting, and the next scheduled meeting is next Wednesday, June 28th, I believe at 6:30 p.m. We are meeting here in person at the Gloucester High School Library, 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road. I'm going to start on this half of the room for introductions. We'll start with Maria.
Maria Puglisi, recording secretary.
Bill Melvin, School Committee.
Melissa Prince, School Committee.
Kathy Clancy, school committee.
Ben Lemon, Superintendent.
Gary Frisch, CFO.
Stephanie Frontier, director of finance.
Thank you. At this time, we have 0 attendees watching our great meetings. The first order of business is reports and deliberations. We will start with the fiscal 2024 budget adjustment. And I look for the administration to take the lead on this.
Where can I share?
Oh, yeah.
I'll start with presentation updates, the changes we've had to make related to the FY24 budget, and we'll go through a few different pieces of that. Had to make changes because of the what the city council approved. Second here. And then I'll go through those. Also, and then a few more adjustments made as we approach the year end this year, which affects next year typically. But I'll go through those. We're going to start with just one last word in the FY23 budget, not one last word, but one word, to remind folks that and to really sort of at this point at the end of the year, just sort of give you the recap on the special education costs, which were quite a bit above budgeted in FY23 as we reported all the way along. So you see, district transportation was almost $1 million above what was budgeted. Special education contract services were above what was budgeted by $230,000. The out-of-district tuition was above what was budgeted for FY23 by $212,000. These are actual expenses.
Can you just repeat what the second number was?
Special education contract services. So the number is
sorry. Is it right in front of me?
Yeah, 203,000. So a total of $1.4 million in special education costs alone that were above our budgeted amounts for FY23. Now we were under in other areas, but as you might expect, this affects our ability to do prepay, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But just wanted to sort of recap that, and as we've been reporting to you and reporting through the whole FY24 budget process, those costs have gone up, and that's the total amount for the year, which is very significant. Okay, so we had to make some budget adjustments in the budget. The mayor and city council approved $2.75 million increase. As you know, we recommended a request a $3.4 million increase. The gap there is $650,000. We're going to go through a few slides here to help all of you understand how we manage that. So we got some good support from. So we had to make some budget adjustments for a couple of reasons. First of all, to address this gap, okay, but also then had to make some changes on ESSER, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and also make sure that we provide sufficient funds for out-of-district tuition in FY24, what we typically call prepay. Okay, that's become a little more difficult for a few reasons, but I'll talk those through. So, City Council. So, one step in reducing that budget gap between the mayor's budget and our budget was the city, the mayor, and Treasurer Don Dunn agreed to take on some one-time payments for the schools, and that is the replacing the grease traps at O'Malley and also GHS. That's something that's been needed since well before I got here, about 7 years ago, is what I've heard. We started trying to get those done. Specialized plumbing and equipment in the schools' kitchens is not covered by our agreement with DPW. It's not one of the things they're responsible for. When that happens, we are responsible for all the work on that, including any design work needed, any product management, and also any contract as well. So, and then, as you may remember, we purchased 5 or 6 buses, used buses that we've actually used ourselves, and the city has taken on payment for this upcoming year. So that totals $340,000. That's money. Those are expenses that now are no longer on our operating budget. So those are dollars we have access to ourselves. Access to in our operating budget. Okay. And then operating changes, $627,000. I'll talk about those in a moment. And then ESSER transfer from FY23 FY24. This is an important piece because it impacts our ability to prepay, but also has a really a two-step impact. One sort of neutral, one positive. We got our original our amendment for this year from DESE on ESSER funds. We got that denied because of timing issues. Okay. Still means we have access to the funds, but we couldn't expend them on things we expected to in FY23. So we're going to reduce ESSER spending in FY23 and make it up through our operating budget. But what it allows us to do is then spend dollars in FY24 using ESSER dollars and take those expenses off of operating budget in FY24. To watch over the course of 2 years, but it impacts FY23, the operating budget, and then benefits in some ways the operating budget in FY24. In all these reductions, which so they cover $650,000, the gap with the city, but then they also allow more than that, okay, and that allows us to address the special education budget in FY24. Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
How much is the bus 1 year of the bus payment?
92.
Around 90,000.
Oh, the grease traps were what? I thought the grease traps were like 175 or something.
It was 227,000. Then there was some fees on top of that for monitoring, project management 25,000, and some architectural fees of 18,000. Brings it up to 270, and then we have some room for if there's a change order or two.
Yeah, I noticed the city council approved 300. I think it was
300, yes. So we have some room in case there's an additional charge.
So then I'm going to look at the first 2 lines here, the grease traps and operating changes, and just go into more detail on those so you understand those. So facilities budget. So the one-time funding on So the one-time funding from the city on the capital budget is $200. That helps with the grease traps, and then 138,000. That's about 100,000 of that, and 90,000 actually is is paying for the one-time payment or next year's payment on the school buses. And then about $30,000 of that is a reduction on expenses in transportation. Building-based reductions, that's a variety of things, everything from supplies, such a couple of special education positions. Really got those 2 things primarily. We have free FTE reduction, special education positions we'll talk about in a moment. That's two teachers and 1 paraprofessional. We also have additional retirements. So as you know, every year, as we get closer to the end of the year, we learn more retirements and above and beyond what we anticipated. So there's some more retirement savings. We're going to reduce the special education contingency from $500,000 to $250,000. make this work. And then we're deferring moving ESER operating positions to the operating fund as well. So that allows us to close the gap in the city and then have $645,000, which we apply to the special education at a district tuition budget. And then this is reconciling prepaid. So you'll remember that our last B&F meeting, we came forward and explained that we anticipated, projected $1.1 million prepayment. That's in line with what we've done in the past few years, 1 million one year, $1.2 million another year. But something that changed in that. One is this, I mentioned this ESER, we got denied for our amendment because of timing issues, okay, on expenditures. And so because we don't have that ESER dollars to spend FY23, we're moving to FY24, that means that we had to apply more things to the operating budget this year. By applying more items to the operating budget this year that we thought we were going to go in ESER, that reduces our ability to prepay by $327,000. Okay, those are expenses that then will be opened up in next year's operating budget for special education. And then we had to do some revision of salary expenditures because there was some disconnect in terms of reporting on salaries that were on grants versus the operating budget. So the way they were encumbered and then reported underreported that those expenses, and our team, Stephanie and Gary, figured that out later this year at the end of really June, as the salary lines were sort of cleared, because they got to the end of the year. That was not over expenditure, it actually was underreporting, but we learned of that difference. And because of that, we're spending more on salaries than we thought we were. They're all within budget or on grants, but there was more than we actually had thought we were spending. Thought we had more of a balance there that we didn't have. Those two pieces reduce our prepaid to $500,000 for FY23. That is okay, because we're going to make some adjustments for next year, which help us out with that. So there's some moving around here, but it really sort of falls out. It doesn't have an impact on the budget for FY23, FY24, other than making some reporting changes. Really, just some changes in sort of offsets and that sort of stuff. So this added tuition budget, and this is where it washes out here. We're increasing the FY24 budget next year because we're reducing prepay this year. Okay, the actual expenditures for next year we don't think will change more than from what we budgeted, but what year they're being paid in changes. Okay, so instead of being prepay at $1.25 million, we're going down to $500,000. Okay, instead of using a circuit breaker for FY24, the FY23 reimbursement for circuit breaker at $1.275 million, we will utilize it at $1.4 million. Okay, and then that means that the expenditures are more in for average tuition next year, as opposed to reducing it through prepay. But the costs themselves aren't changing. Pause there, see if that's something folks are following.
I am good, yes.
It's really just a matter of
Timing of payment.
Yeah, it's really timing of payments, and it's timing of payments in two ways. One, ESER payments, okay, so they'll be more in FY24 than FY23, and then really special education payments. Instead of using the operating budget from FY23 and prepay, we'll be using more operating budget next year to account those costs. And part of the way we're doing that is by utilizing more circuit breaker in FY24.
By how much higher?
We're in FY24, instead of using 1.274, we're using 1.38.
So it's about 106,000.
Right.
Yeah, no, if you get it.
So I mentioned that we are having fewer ESSER positions come onto the operating budget. It's one of the ways we had to reduce from on the 650 there. We also are taking it, but we are taking some off. These are the three we're taking off. Plus, we're also taking off the CBT director, as you remember, has been on a private grant this past year, and that's coming onto the operating budget as well. So that's now in a more sort of safe place, so to speak, rather than a grant. And this is again primarily benefiting O'Malley, so a special education teacher at O'Malley, and then 2 interventionists. And these are the interventions in math and literacy that are really helping at this point, also working with our special education teachers. So we have a benefit in terms of practices. Like we're learning what's making impact in our interventions and intervention classes, I should say, and applying that to our special education support work.
Confused, not confused, but so on page 5, we have defer moving ESSER positions to the operating fund, which are those 3 positions.
Sorry, no, these are the ones you remember, we're actually going to be moving 6 positions, on the operating budget.
Okay,
Now we're only moving these 3. I'm telling you what we are doing, I'm not telling you what we're not doing. That makes sense.
Okay.
But you're right. The other flip side of this are 3 positions that we are continuing to have on grant. I believe that is O'Malley assistant principal.
The behavioral
BCBA.
BCBA.
Okay.
Oh, no, that's
Well,
not.
that's FY25. Yes.
Oh, it was the interventionist.
Where?
And one was O'Malley.
No, we're keeping on.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
if
all right, we spend here.
Yeah, that's right. We're
And this is how we're spending the ESSER money next year instead of this year, by keeping those positions on the grant.
Yes,
Did I follow that
yes,
right? Okay.
yes, that's right. So there were 6 positions. Stephanie, you can find an earlier presentation that'd be helpful.
So we didn't lose any money from ESSER. We did, it's just the timing of when we're gonna spend it, and we're gonna
Exactly.
pay those positions next year instead of moving them onto the operating budget, and it's a wash.
Right. So yeah, it does mean that we'll have more positions than we planned to try to get on the operating budget in 2025.
Right,
We may not be able to get them all.
but we didn't know that when we started this.
Yeah, I mean, we had a plan, but then
We were.
special education went. We saw the increasing
Right.
expenditure for special education.
Mhm.
Yeah, so basically we're just deferring those ESSER moves to the operating budget.
Yes, that's right, And again, I would say that where I was quite confident a year ago, we would follow a 3-year plan on that.
Yeah,
I'm less confident right now, honestly.
yeah.
But that's, like I said, that first slide we show you, the special education changes and the costs. That's really what's driving that, certainly, because those costs, there's things that go up more than I think any of us expected.
And it's 25 the year with, it'd be a silly question, but it's 25 the year with the ESSER money is.
Yeah, September 30th so the beginning part, really after the first quarter of the FY25, it ends, we can't expend anymore. What that means is we really can't, last year of FY25, we can't have any salaries. So to speak.
Right.
We could have summer expenditure on the curriculum, for example. And I don't know, I can't remember if we're planning that or not, but that's really, otherwise, other than that type of expense, FY25 is, for ESSER, essentially doesn't exist. Okay.
Question.
So then staffing adjustments, just want to be clear, you folks are clear on staffing adjustments. So you'll remember during all the presentation, we talked about how typically what you want schools and districts to do is adjust staff on an annual basis. Sometimes that's increases, sometimes that's decreases. I mean, it's probably both each year. Decreases happen for a few primary reasons. Could be enrollment fluctuations, could be changing levels of enrollment fluctuations that's in a class or a grade or a course, especially at the high school level, or courses. Changing level of service needs for students with complex needs or special need, or graduation of those students, or through programmatic changes. So you see we have a few here, and they're really a combination of the things we're talking about. Plum Cove teacher, I've talked about this before, very small class size at kindergarten this year, which means next year you only need 1 first grade teacher. O'Malley math teacher, it's a combination of schedule and program changes. Changes for language, that's course selection and enrollment. 2 special education teachers, and that's course selection specifically in French. French is not being enrolled in at this point, so we don't need to be teaching French anymore in first year. We'll have the folks will continue who have been doing it, so they won't get dinged. 2 special education teachers, that's about certain student services not being needed in that program or to that level. And then a food service manager was based on school consolidation. All these are addressed through attrition, open positions, or assignment changes. So folks did not lose a job because of these situations. People moved on, retired, that sort of thing. But that's where we had open positions, so people could find a position in a different school or different.
I just wanted to ask about the from co-teacher.
Yeah.
So do we know what the enrollment is at Beaman for first grade, like what the class sizes are?
We do. I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know. I mean,
Are they small, big, normal?
I think normal, but
Because we did the change, right? That goes into effect this year.
right.
So I'm just curious to see how that played out.
It hasn't created any large class sizes at all.
Okay.
This particular one wasn't related to that. It was just it was a smaller kindergarten class size across the district.
Okay.
Meaning this year just ended. We probably should have actually reduced that to 1 kindergarten class this year. By the time we sort of picked up on it, it was a little late to do that. It was quite disruptive, but we probably should have done that at the beginning of this past year.
And what accommodations are we making for that one teacher who can't collaborate with another? Don't they group or do something at Uncle?
Yeah, there's gosh.
You trying to think of a name?
Trying to think what we call it. Can't remember.
They don't platoon.
Platooning, yeah, there you go. No, they do platoon at Plum. I don't know if they do it in first grade, okay? They don't do kindergarten. So that person will take on all subjects, obviously. I don't know exactly what they'll do in terms of collaborating for the person support. I mean, I'm confident we have a math coach, a literacy coach there. Obviously, Dan Jew is very involved in charcoal support as well. So they'll have that same level of support. I just don't know exactly what else it's at this point.
And do we know what that class size is? How many kids?
It's 20,
20?
yeah. Maybe 21, I think it's 20. Yeah, I think it's 20.
And on the special ed, 2 special ed education, EBS and O'Malley, that's 1 per, or that's not?
That is 1 at EBS,
1 at
at
each.
O'Malley. Yeah, 1 each.
Yeah,
Exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah.
And just to follow up on that a little bit, do we know what the kindergarten coming in is? Is it big? Sounds like it is.
We're sort of, we're looking at it.
I know it's been early a little bit.
Yeah, so it's still early, looks smaller to me,
It does,
but things change,
yeah. last
So
minute.
we'll keep a real close eye on it this year because last year it's surprised us a little bit. And we'll keep a close eye on that because we don't want to repeat the same mistake we made at that one program. But yeah, it looks smaller this year, but a lot can change.
And
The one thing on enrollment, because you brought up, is that EBS looks great. We're about 405 right now, and as I said, there'll be more kindergarten starting. So it looks like I thought I was expecting we actually would be under 400 for the first year, but yeah, it's going really well.
And where the consolidation with the food service manager position.
Yeah. Knowing
how their descriptions have kind of morphed within the kitchens. I guess I'm just kind of concerned the first year of a school reducing staff without knowing how it's gonna flow
Yeah.
and it's so new to us at that school.
No, we actually
Should I have a
we haven't
concern?
reduced staff. We haven't reduced staff there. Meaning all the folks at we'll call them cooks, okay, at both buildings. And have moved over, and we actually added another part-time staff person there.
Okay,
But position, I should say, but it's one manager. So the staffing is actually, I think, one part-time person more. I should say this.
and
Yep.
don't you reduce by seniority though? So how is all that playing out? If it's being reported that you're eliminating a food service manager.
Yeah.
how are you physically doing that? Like what?
Yeah, so we had to
What's the
post, we had to post for the staff, the manager at EBS.
Okay.
I mean, this is playing out right now, so I won't go into too much, I'll talk about the process, okay?
Yeah,
So we had to post for the manager at EBS,
okay,
by our collective bargaining agreement, the manager with the most senior, the managers would like, the manager who would like that job. The most senior one gets it, okay? Then, that person, then if they don't have, the second person, don't have a position, they can go to the, they can bump, someone's less senior than them.
okay,
And that can be for a manager position. Or that can be for a cook position.
okay.
It's different. folks.
Yeah,
Yeah, so, and then if you have the domino, further domino effect, and then that person, if they bump a manager, then the manager doesn't have a manager position, but they have the ability to bump someone else in the system. And so just so you know, we're working very closely with the Teamsters on making sure we're following the right process and informing folks in the right way. And I'm confident that, it's a difficult thing to have that happen, but we're abiding by the contract, of course. I want to minimize the impact on the individuals, but we're making sure that we're doing it accordingly.
so let me ask it this way then. At the end of the day, do we have one less person employed on Teamsters food service? Or is it just a matter of moving around in positions? Because I thought I heard you say we've hired a part-time.
No, so we have two positions open, or will have two positions open. So if one person is bumped from
So
a
it's just
position,
bumping around.
yeah, they'll have a position in the district.
Okay, so no one lost their job.
I don't expect anyone to lose their job, other than folks have left, we have open positions,
Okay,
because other folks have left for other reasons.
Yeah.
But no one's losing their job because we're forced to.
all right, and do we have enough staff for the flexibility if we did realize that we might, being unfamiliar with the East Vet's kitchen, do we have enough staff to move around if we needed to, or would we have to hire?
We don't have enough staff in food service, enough to be comfortable with having extra folks and substitutes. It used to be, my understanding, is
Yeah.
that we have substitutes, substitute food service workers, pretty readily at hand. That's not the case anymore. Better this year than last year, that's for sure, but not too many substitutes readily available.
I guess I'm just worried where it's the biggest class now, biggest school, in a new kitchen. Hard to
It
predict
could be
what's gonna
easier, very
happen.
honestly.
Huh?
It could be
It
easier.
could be easier,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But no, but again, we
Might
added.
need more eyes though.
Ovens that work.
Yeah.
Right, so
Right.
we do,
Right.
again, we added a part-time position at, so if you think about taking all the cooks from East Gloucester and veterans, adding a part-time person onto that, still one manager. Yeah, so,
Someone might not lose their job, but you could lose your position.
yes, that's right, yeah.
Well, they can bump though, right?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good point.
So
Right.
the manager or the cook with the least amount of seniority somewhere in the school district.
Yeah.
Well, but he's
Triple
saying
They're
that.
just saying there's open positions, right? So no one's.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a cool position.
But again, that's how the collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
You,
It's they chose it
and
that way.
the school committee and the team should agree on it works.
Yeah.
So when we have a situation like this.
Got it.
We looked up that information you
Yes.
requested. So those positions are O'Malley PACE teacher, GHS school adjustment counselor, and GHS special ed teacher.
Those are three that will continue to be on ESSER.
So it's not the assistant principal?
No, the assistant principal is coming off, must be coming off on
So
FY 25.
GHS, school adjustment, special education
Coming up.
teacher, and what was the third one?
The O'Malley PACE teacher,
ACE,
yeah, that's like a transition,
Yeah.
and yeah,
thank you.
great. So then this is just a summary. So this is what the budget is, and the proposed increase is 0.75, which matches the city. And then here are the adjustments made in each department or school. Based on the same adjustments we spoke with you about, and this is how they sort out across the schools or departments.
And I suggest that we increase the special education contingency by the $8,799. That seems to be lower. In other words, we've made more reductions by. Is that 657,879 or 658?
658.
658.
So we want to match what was approved in terms of what is in our department detail. Right, so I think there's a little extra cut here than was
Oh.
necessary, so I'm suggesting
Oh,
that
yeah.
we.
What happened was the instead of 3,400,000, we had 3,408,000. So,
Oh,
yeah, we were, so now
rounding.
so now you're this number,
has to come down by,
49,738 is what they,
yeah,
okay,
that's the number that we need to hit. We were actually $1 short and I said, no, let's grab that dollar. Every dollar counts.
every dollar. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Fred.
And then, was it, any motion recommended for the?
Are we transferring? These are transfers?
Oh, no, we'll go to budget transfer in a moment, but.
No, I'm just trying to think what we call this, adjustment.
budget adjustment.
So we approve the budget adjustment to the full school committee?
And then recommend the
So we
bottom line, right? Do we-
Yeah,
Two
I think,
motions.
yeah.
Or it all can be in the same motion.
Yeah, it can be in the same motion.
Because I thought the outcome of the meeting next Wednesday was just to vote the bottom line. I didn't know we had to.
We gotta vote for changes within the budget.
Right.
Which gets us to the fund.
I just thought we didn't need to do that because we can figure it how we want. That's okay.
No, we can, but we need Gary to have our approval as to what the details
What we
are.
just went through. Got it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little slow today. Not too long. You want to make those motions?
Sure. I make a motion that we recommend to the full school committee the fiscal year 24 budget adjustments as presented on slide 5, which includes reducing facilities budget by 200,000, reducing transportation of 138,000, building-based reductions in expenses and one special education position of 90,000, 3 full-time equivalents of special education positions, additional 146, the building-based reductions was 90, right? Additional retirements reflect that savings of 143,000, reduce special education contingency from $500 to $250,000. So it's a $250,000 reduction, and defer moving ESSER positions to the operating fund as detailed in this presentation in the amount of $327,000. So moved.
Second. Oh, sorry.
And increase special education out of district tuition budget. Those so the
That's
first are
a lot
all
of motion.
reductions, but those are the detail of. the
Yeah,
motion.
no, I know. I'm just trying to think if we should chop it in half.
Well,
Do the
You could just
adjustments
say-
bottom line.
as presented, and then
I'm trying to think that sometimes when our motions are just referring back to a presentation, sometimes it's hard to.
you want me to
That
just-
the motion should have a little more detail in the motion sometimes, so
or I could attach that slide to the
to our minutes.
Right, so I
Okay.
saw on the city side, when they do their minutes, they can take a picture of the slide and incorporate into the minutes.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, I highly
Instead of an
recommend.
attachment?
Yep,
All right,
might be
so,
something to look at, so when we make the motions, it's right there, right? So
great, so as presented. Strike
Okay.
everything else.
And then
What
it's
slide was it?
slide 5.
Slide 5. The of today's presentation. Okay. Want to second me though?
I did, oh, sorry, second.
Okay, we have were you clear on the motion, Maria?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion regarding the adjustments and the bottom line recommendation?
Just for Gary, the presentation of the full committee is gonna reflect the motion, correct? I mean, is that-
Yes, we'll do something similar.
Very similar.
Okay.
So, I should probably amend the motion to, say, to say with a fiscal year 2024 budget, a total of 49,738,897. So the motion has the bottom line.
Yeah, that's
Is
the
that
portion.
what
Yeah. Very, very good.
You need me to second that again?
Second on the amendment,
Second.
and Bill? Discussion on the amendment. So we vote the amendment. Roll call vote on the amendment.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Chairperson Prince,
Yes,
Kathy Clancy,
Yes,
and now a vote on the motion amended.
Mr. Melvin,
Yes.
Chairperson Prince,
Yes.
Kathy Clancy.
yes. So you fix that all into one nice motion.
We should have Maria make the
Yeah,
motion.
That is a.
I'll need that memo before we go to the next meeting. Okay. Anything else on budget adjustments?
But now going to transfers.
Yep, budget transfers.
I'll send it to Gary.
Which is slide number 13. Correct?
Yes.
So,
Well, I don't have 12.
Oh, okay.
Number 12 here.
Oh, yeah, there's no 12.
You have a 12?
there's
No,
no,
we didn't
Oh,
print.
that's
I
12.
this is 12 right there.
Um,
Yeah, I didn't print the right color slide.
Yeah.
Stefani,
wasted ink. Here is a budget transfer from several salary accounts to accumulate to $400,000, where we increase the budget to the out of district transportation. So as you know, we were 975,000 short or over the budget. We needed to increase the budget to pay the bills. And we took it from various salary accounts and from special ed tuition private as well. So those budgets went down and the budget went up in the out of district transportation.
So these 4 accounts,
Correct.
and this is the forecasted balance in those accounts. Money unspent is now.
Right,
shifting.
money unspent in those accounts. Then we needed to pay bills in the out of district transportation.
And the special education tuition private versus public at the beginning of the year is always, don't really put it one place.
Right,
Anyway, and so this reflects the breakout of those
yes,
particular places.
right, between those tuition accounts.
can I just ask, does that money reflect any payment for the students that were unable to find a placement? That 5
No,
students?
no, this
Okay.
is just for the kids, for the students that had placements and we had routes for.
Got it.
So those that are received, that we can't find a place for, and are receiving services, those, that's a separate line item in the budget.
Those, I want to make sure that I tracking exactly what you're asking. There are some students that are waiting for placements.
Yeah.
So there's no out of district cost developed for that. So as soon as that is placed, then we'll sign a contract. We'll have some bills to pay. Were you gonna say
Yeah,
something?
but if a student can't be in our school for some reason, then we might be providing services outside of school, tutoring and the like.
Yeah.
So that could typically come down to our contracted services line item.
Okay, and that's what I think I was referring to, those kids that receive, in-home tutoring, they can't be in the school for about.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of services they're receiving.
Yeah.
And then we'll match an account for that.
And on slide 2, it reflects overage of 233,000 for that special education contract services, so that's.
Right.
aligned.
Without going too far off the tracks, Gary, is it, I mean, so we're doing this year, we're making these transfers to cover that special ed transportation cost. We probably are already thinking, hey, it's not gonna get any better, like 2025 moving forward. Those
Exactly.
costs are gonna continue to increase, I would think.
Yeah, we're anticipating the same amount of expenses for next year. So we're gonna be paying for that from out of district or circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is going to increase for next year because our claims were higher than in previous years.
I see.
So we'll receive more money. We'll take that money and then pay current claims.
Okay, so is there a motion for this transfer? We're gonna do them all together. Yep.
You want, I have one more to,
Yeah, those will do it all.
this one, we had some additional costs in the contract services account in the central office for 20,000. We knew we weren't going to spend it in the athletic professional services. So we took the money from there to then increase the contracted services in the district office. And that was used for advanced maintenance solutions, which is a custodial and some other cost.
So were they unanticipated costs or just over?
Over,
So 20,000 out of athletics, will go to the business office to pay custodial costs.
yes.
Is there a motion for
I
transfer?
move that we transfers as presented.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, Maria?
Mr. Melvin,
Yes,
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
and Kathy Clancy.
Great. Next topic is surplus furniture and equipment from veterans in East Gloucester.
Great. So each better, these are just the sort of event dates that have been, if things are happening. This is in the next couple of slides, we have surplus. And disposition of things in the schools. So just sort of as the recap, because I shared this last week, is furniture is arriving, I think next week. Product release is substantially complete, June 30th, and that allows us to get a certificate of occupancy. Moving the classroom, moving from teachers and classroom materials, not furniture like that. All the stuff that people pack up from their classrooms at the end of July. August 8th, teachers and staff can move into set up rooms. So student family tours for the East Veterans community on August 24th, 25th. We'll have a community tours on August 26th, which is Saturday. School opens on the 29th. I probably should put that here. And then that's an important date. August 29th is when the school opens for well, actually 28th is when it opens for staff, their first work day of the year. 29th for students, and then on September 21st, we'll have ribbon cutting. So make sure things are fully operational.
Make sure you put exclamation points on the August 29th line item, so we'll open.
Okay, we'll put that. We'll ask that. And then before we get all that stuff can happen, well, in addition to all that stuff happening, because this next part happens separately, really, is just to work in terms of disposition. So one of the first steps of disposition in terms of the building, East Gloucester, also obviously St. Anne's, but it's a little less dramatic. And we need to figure out the things that are inside. So furniture, supplies, materials, anything we're not taking with us essentially. So last week, principals toured both facilities, EGS and St. Anne's, that's at St. Anne's. The tag label items that they wanted to move to their schools. Those items we moved June 22nd. We will allow school staff and city department, the staff or heads to claim items in the building, so they'll be able to go in the building on June 26th. Schools go first, and then for a couple hours, and the city department heads can come in after that to claim things that they need. At that point, just after that, the purchasing department from the city will go and identify items that are worth $5,000 or more. That could include what's left in a whole classroom, as an item. You can take things in the classroom for whatever dollar amount they decide is the appropriate dollar amount. At that point, because all the school principals and staff had an opportunity, and then also city departments had an opportunity. At that point, all the items within the buildings are considered surplus. There's no identified need that folks who work for the city and make those decisions see for any of those items in there. They're essentially don't have value to us, okay? Which allows on June 28th, next week, for the school committee to vote to name all the materials and contents of the two buildings as surplus. That designation, not East Gloucester building, but just the contents of two schools being deemed surplus, allows the city to proceed with all the other steps of disposition. They are here. They would continue to move things. Anything claimed by the city or school staff would move June 30th. We had to move. Then there's an auction that the city manages, so the purchasing department manages on the items that are still available there. They may be having a potential bidder walkthrough on site on 12th. They're not sure about that yet. It depends if they need it or not. Auction bids, the sold items are labeled. We get a new disposition pricing based on what's left with the mover. So at that point, the movers we have would say to all the stuff that's left, this is what we will do to get rid of it for you. And then we're expecting the pickup from the auction items on July 21st, and then the remaining surplus items are moved to St. Anthony's, yes. So they can then take it from there, or just demolished from there, take away that way. So yeah, I would say that.
Who was creating the list,
The list of,
the items?
so the staff created inventory list of what's left in their classrooms after they packed everything up. So we have those lists that I think they're actually posted on each classroom. And as people, let's say a principal took 2 tables, they would cross that off the inventory list and we'd go from there.
So will the school committee see a list when we vote it surplus? Will we know what we're voting surplus?
Yes, we're gonna have a list of items that are remaining.
Yeah.
And so then that list will go to the school committee.
Next Wednesday,
Yeah,
when we vote it. Yeah.
yes.
We usually have to know what we're voting, right? As
Sure.
far as what we're actually declaring surplus.
I expect it'll say office supplies as opposed to staples.
Right,
Okay,
I would hope so.
yeah, I just want to,
Please.
exactly. Want to
But like if there's desks, right? 500
Right.
desks, right? I'm not just guessing, just throwing that out there or something.
Yeah.
Right,
And then,
I think we'll have those lists actually by classroom.
They could buy auditorium chairs.
That will be on the auction.
and like lockers and stuff like that.
There are
No
no
lockers
lockers.
are on.
no
They have
lockers.
little.
There's a lot of furniture, desk chairs.
I do have a question about
Sure.
that though. No one has talked to me about those auditorium chairs. And I assume somebody would talk to somebody if they really wanted, maybe a community member or a parent, alumni or whatever. You would know.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily know. but-
You wouldn't know, but somebody would have known to say,
But that
hey,
needs to go to auction though, right? If it's going to the community, if it's not the
Okay.
school and it's
Right.
not the
Okay.
city.
Yeah.
That's
It
right.
has
So
to
when we
say release it and then they
do it
they
there.
do
Right.
it that,
Yeah.
Got it.
yeah.
Right.
Okay,
But
So-
just
so
to let
just-
you
just-
know.
yeah.
To auction, we're only putting out anything above 5,000. Right. Yeah, so a chair may not.
fall into that category.
But there has to be a list, that's why I asked about the list.
There's a
And
list.
once
It will be-
city and school no longer has use for it,
Right.
we declare it surplus, and then the public can come in, the community,
Yeah.
the city of Gloucester, the taxpayers of Gloucester, because it's their equipment.
But that's happening through the auction process. It's not happening through,
But if it's not worth $5,000, what if it's a chair? What if it's one of these chairs, right? Say there's a chair there,
so.
where is that going?
At this point, the city runs this process, okay?
Yeah.
I don't think there is an intention to have an open house of the buildings.
I think they have to
Okay.
put an advertisement in the paper.
Again,
Yeah.
that's, you
For the
know,
auction.
something that
For
the city
the,
does.
but like I said, it's taxpayers' property, so before it has to be released as available. That's the whole idea of declaring it surplus, because it makes it available.
I
We make it available to the city, and then the city makes it,
don't know if the city makes it available to the public, okay? I don't know this,
okay?
okay? So, and we'll have real quick.
And I'm thinking of like preschools that might need equipment, right? Because we have a lot of preschools in Gloucester that might need desks or something. So
Right,
I'm
but
thinking,
that,
how would they,
right, but that's different than the public. When I hear public, okay, I think of individuals coming in and.
well, they're not at
and it's
Gloucester
on-
City
on- and-
schools,
and-
so that would be public.
No, right, and touring the building and taking, as like this stapler, like, no, but
Yeah.
I wanna be clear about this,
Yeah, yeah.
because, you know, it's about expectations here.
Mhm.
If you have the expectation that any member of the public can come into the school and shop, that's just not how it works.
No, and that's not what I was
Right, no.
envisioning, but I believe there has to be, if I remember correctly, doing this once or twice. But there has to be notification to the taxpayers of Gloucester that property has been declared surplus, and how the city manages that. I don't know,
Anyway,
But by that
maybe
point-
next.
but we must have done it at West Parish, so we're just gonna look back and see.
Yeah,
what we did.
that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they're, you know, again, all we have on this, you know, city legal counsel on the calls,
Yeah.
purchasing on the
Yeah.
calls, CFOs on the calls, treasurer, I'm sorry. So, but they're managing a process and,
So maybe Stacy Capone.
Yeah.
Give us some document,
did you want her at the meeting or just,
no, just document on how
You might
the
use
city,
municipal too.
the after us.
And I'm just more curious about the list. In other words, when we take a vote on next week, do we know what we're declaring surplus?
Yes.
yeah,
I did take a couple of calls from a couple of constituents asking about the process and I called Amy on it and she kind of basically laid out exactly what's on these two slides here. But when I sent that back over, they basically had the same question. What about the stuff that, you know, is declared surplus?
There's a process. I think
There's a process.
there's a policy, a state policy on it.
yeah, there's laws, regulations on it, again,
But we've done this before, West Parish, so we're just gonna look it up.
if you're fielding calls about
Maybe-
folks, individuals going to the building shopping for individual items,
Happen.
right, it just, that's, my understanding is that,
Maybe Talina can also tell you what they did at West Parish, because most of this good stuff at West Parish obviously have taken, it's so other, you know, probably the age of furniture and things.
right,
But maybe there was a sentimental connection to certain things that people expressed an interest. And how did she handle that? How was that handled? Because I do know they sold some bricks. But that's not at this point, because we don't have bricks. Yeah, until we knock it down. So the city knocks it down.
sure, well, documentation from Stacy about
Yeah.
specifically some of the questions you've asked, and also we will check on things.
Okay.
We're not going to, go over the MOA today, but would like to do that at the, this is DPW, sorry, TPS MOA, would like to do that prior to the next meeting, or not, sorry, at the next meeting, the August meeting. And get feedback from, you on anything in there that you see should be changed.
What about community eligibility provisions?
Yeah,
Service.
If we can, I just wanna, I looked up the account for the contracted services. And the reason why we needed more money was because we had an audit bill from our auditors of 31,000. So it wasn't the custodial, but it was the auditors.
Oh, we're going back now.
Yeah,
For the transfer of the
Yeah.
athletics money?
yeah, if you can just change that, no,
So it was for what?
auditors.
Got it. Internal auditors? No.
No, outside auditors, Roselli and Clark. Sorry about that. CEP,
For community eligibility provision,
Yeah,
community eligibility provision.
this is about free meals.
Next year, there's going to be free meals from the state, same as this year. But the state is requesting that,
We expect there to be, I don't think it's been finalized yet.
I was gonna say, I didn't hear that. I
Yeah,
didn't
it's
get
not
that.
finalized yet, but in anticipation of that,
in
the
anticipation,
state asking school districts to do this.
they're asking school districts that have combined 40% or more of their students eligible for free and reduced meals through direct service. That's food stamps or food. They have free food. So the students that are identified, if the district is 40% or more, and each school is 40% or more except for Plum Cove, which is at 30%. But as a district, we're 40% or more of our students qualify for the free lunch. So all schools are going to participate in our CEP. There won't be a difference for next year because we anticipate it's going to be free anyways. But in the future, all meals will be free as long as we stay on the CEP program. Now, we can opt out if we determine that it's a financial hardship. And so we'll be looking at our profit and loss statements each month and determine if we are at least breaking even.
And that determination will be if the reimbursement per meal is matching our expenses. So we'll
Yes.
track that. So next year. It seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, if we do CEP, the state will pick up the difference between CEP and for Plum Cove, for instance, right? So we offer free meals to everyone. So they want us to apply for the federal program, right? CEP is federal.
Right.
Yeah.
So that this federal will pick up meals to the extent that they are eligible, and the state will cover the gap
Balance.
for next year.
And the state anticipates if you are participate in the CEP program, you'll be gaining more federal aid. And so the state will pay less.
Yeah.
You still get reimbursed, the same reimbursement, but the state is thinking, let's let the federal government pick up as much as they can.
Sure.
Yeah, Gary, give you a 30-second snapshot of how you can not cover how the costs of this cannot be covered. I mean, it's a federal program. You're saying, well, we're gonna have to look at our profit and loss statement.
Yeah, I can easily tell you that. So we look at our purchasing for our foods, food cost. And if our food costs and salaries together combined are exceeding the reimbursement dollars we're receiving from both the state and the federal, then we can say, hey, we're not doing as well.
So the reimbursement isn't on supplies, it's on per meal.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, per meal.
But we can figure out per meal costs.
Yeah.
So it's really just informing you.
Yeah, okay, we don't take any action on that.
No action, we just wanted you to be aware.
And so that announcement hasn't come out. We anticipating it July. I think that's when it came out last year, if I remember correctly, the end of July.
Yeah, we gotta wait till the budget process. is
Budget
complete.
process,
Right,
yeah.
yeah, so, and then it's due by July 3rd. No, they'll always do that. But that's, that's.
O'Malley window project.
So, nothing much more than, a verbal update. It's underway. They are,
Can't believe we're there. Seems like we just got a dog about it.
yeah, so we are, yeah, so it's underway. I mean, they're doing, they windows arrive before the end of the school year. And they have they had one staging area prior to the beginning of the end of school. They got another, I think as of probably today or, in the parking lot, the staff parking lot in the back. And they are underway. So they're doing, they're basically going around the building, pretty much what they're doing. So they have a whole process in terms of what's built, what rooms they're using when, what rooms people can't be in, that sort of thing. But yes, it's basically full steam ahead. So we show the picture of the all, so it's all has a picture next week.
And can you tell me the status of the dome?
Well, yeah. So the dome and what they call clear story, which are the high windows in the hall, like the hallway, down to the cafeteria, in the commons. Okay, those are things that are going to be done next summer. Yeah. Every other window, including the ones that are in the library, media center that go down to the science center, the very, very tall windows, are all being replaced this year in all the classrooms, obviously.
So we have those same windows at the courthouse, and I think they're the connection.
Oh, it could be, yeah. We did,
Window.
yeah, for us, there wasn't enough time to get them ordered. It's just a longer delay on time.
And when did you call it clear story?
Clear story, yeah, we call it clear story,
That's right.
CLERE. Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
So
it doesn't.
those will be done next summer, but the
Yeah.
majority of the windows are
yeah,
done for the
yeah,
winter,
all the other
keep
windows,
everything
yeah,
warm.
yeah.
That library is cold.
No, the library's cold when in the summertime, when the air conditioning's pumping. Yeah, it's just,
Years ago, it was cold in there.
yeah, no, but I mean, really, what one of the benefits of this is, as I think people know, is that we'll be actually be able to control heating and cooling better.
Right.
Because right now, because the single glazed windows, if it gets sunny in a room, it gets hot in a room, matter,
And
a
cold,
year or so.
cold in the
In
winter.
the cold winter, right,
Right.
exactly, so
So it's comfort will increase
that is.
throughout the building.
I don't have a lot of faith in the HVAC system anywhere in the world, so
Right.
I'm not gonna guarantee that.
Right.
It'll be better.
They've done a lot of work though.
Yeah, I could say it'll be better.
Yeah.
Because right now, I'm sure it's drafty with single pane windows. Okay.
We're good.
I think we're set.
All right, anything else to come before us tonight?
Yeah, we just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good year done. Hopefully, we're on to fiscal year 2024.
But we are clear for the Fiesta. Yes.
Diva. Okay, motion to adjourn. Roll call. Yes. I can-
Yeah, everybody else?
He second, I just said yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
Good night.
Ethan,